Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome back to the DMZ, everybody.
So, as folks may or may not know, on our new platform, it does not allow for any editing. This is just raw, 100% pure, Matt and Bill, real life. So, I'm just warning all listeners that we're doing this Wednesday morning, not super early in the morning, but both my children are still asleep. And I'm on the back porch. They're going to wake up and be like, where are my parents and why is nobody feeding me breakfast? So if we hear like blood curdling shrieking in the middle, I may have to tend to that, and then you'll have to just riff,
Yeah.
for a minute or two.
I want to be clear. One could edit. It's theoretically possible that someone, a producer, let's say, could edit this, but that is beyond the scope of my technical capabilities. And so we've decided to go with, we're going to do it live, as Bill.
So this is a roundabout way to say if you give us huge amount of money via Patreon,
Yes.
we could hire a producer to do that, or still do this and just pocket that money. Either way,
Yeah.
it's going to be a net benefit for us.
And I would argue that there is something to be gained from the spontaneity of the live performance. We don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Anything could happen. It could be caught live. So there is some benefit to like a live performance, but whatever the case may be, it would really be difficult. Yeah, I could probably tape it together, the audio for the audio podcast, which by the way is now searchable on iTunes. We could tape the audio together. The video is beyond the scope of my abilities to edit. So here we are.
Fair enough. So what do you want to talk about?
Well, I want to start with you, Bill, because I had hoped that we're going to get back in the routine of doing these weekly, and then I got a text saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm out next week." So we didn't do last week. So I think you owe us a little recap of how your week off was.
Just a little family vacay. Where I live, it's about a 4.5 hour, 5 hour drive to Montreal. And we typically do the Cape, which is sort of standard Massachusetts vacation. But my wife, who usually is the vacation maestro, was too busy to orchestrate this year, and it was on my shoulders, and I'm a procrastinator. So by the time I got around to it, like all the Cape stuff's booked up. And I was like, let's just drive somewhere. And so I sold the kids on Montreal because they like poutine. I was like, let's just eat poutine every day in Montreal. They're like, yeah, let's do that.
Is that like crudité? What is poutine?
It is not.
Poutine sounds very dirty. It sounds like something. Well,
it is. Poutine is very lowbrow. It's French fries and gravy and cheese curds. And so it was always sort of like this mocked dish from Montreal. Like, this is how pathetic Canada is. Like, this is like their thing. But now, of course, you can get it in America, and even in Montreal, there's like souped up, fancier versions of it. But it's still, at best, it's middle brow. And there's also in Montreal a cat cafe, the cafe that has like 8 cats just roaming around. And so the kids heard about that and they want to see the cats. So that's why I sold them in Montreal.
So you went to a cat house to get poutine.
You can't get poutine at the cat cafe.
Let me just say, I've always wanted. I've never been to Montreal. I've always wanted to go. Should I go? It seems like a cool place.
Well, you definitely should go. I mean, and I'm not going to say I'm like the expert, like all there is to do in Montreal. It's my second time that I have gone, but they have one. It is a bilingual city. I think by law, the storekeepers have to greet you in French. You have to start by talking French. They try very hard. The French separatists want to maintain French culture. They don't like the notion that English is creeping in and ruining the place.
Now, is that considered conservative or progressive? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
I don't want to pretend I'm a bigger expert on Quebec politics than I am. I do think the sovereign French speakers lean right, um, but I'm not sure that it's like that's a clean,
Yeah.
simple, determination. Montreal, I did learn, has a very left mayor, first woman mayor, a new party that is like an environmental, like a municipal environmental party just for Montreal, and she beat out like a center left candidate 5 years ago and just won the rematch last year. Um,
Does
uh,
she know how to party? Does she dance? Does she do like
she's not
TikTok
as young
videos
as the
for?
Finnish prime minister, but she is. I think she's 48. We should talk about that, by the way. We should talk about the Finnish prime minister. Um, so anyway, so if you want like a taste of France, but not actually going to France, I think Montreal is a good way to go.
Is it
Uh,
what's crossing the border like? Is it difficult or easy? Did
it
you
was
need
very easy.
passports and stuff?
You do need a passport. We actually made a mistake because we did not realize that kid passports expire earlier than adult passports. Adult passports are 10 years and kids are 5.
Hmm.
So we glanced at our passports, like, oh, 10 years, we're good. And we didn't like, glance at their passports. We get there, they're like, this one's expired. We're like, sorry. And they let us through. Um, so, don't bring in fruits and vegetables and
So they
otherwise,
didn't do family separation at the border
they did
for you.
not. They did not.
That's good.
So it wasn't that long a process. You're just driving to a checkpoint. Um, and so we found good. We found good poutine. We went to a 24-hour place that had 30 different kinds of poutine. I got mine topped with smoked meat. Smoked meat is also a Montreal thing. I didn't go this time. There's a deli called Schwartz's, which is known for their smoked meat. So you definitely should do that. Montreal has its own kind of bagel. It's a touch sweeter. You still see me, Matt? I'm getting an error message.
I still see you, but I'm alarmed by the alert. So
Okay, now we're back. So we went to a famous Montreal bagel shop, uh, and I went to a poutine place called the Orange Julep, which is kind of like a 50s style drive-in place with a giant orange structure, like a giant orange sphere, because the Orange Julep is their signature drink. Um, and when we came, so we only did a few days in Montreal. We also went to a place called the Biodome, which is kind of like an indoor zoo with a different, like a tropical rainforest area and a polar area and a woodsy area with indigenous animals there. Then we went to a lakeside cabin just over the border in Vermont on Lake Champlain. And this is my big tip for anyone who wants to go do Montreal and you're driving up I-91 through Vermont to get there. There's a poutine place on the Canadian side of that border called Gilligan, which is definitely by far the best poutine that I've had. And it's kind of hard to like Google it and find like articles about it. My wife spotted it with some Googling. Uh, but like you could stay in Vermont, do the lakeside cabin, and go pop over the border and get poutine at Gilligan and come back. It's that close. Um, and
now that I'm in charge of the videos, when I edit these things and put it on YouTube, I'm trying to title it something that's search engine optimization that might get searched. But otherwise, man, this would be the poutine episode already if I were headlining it like the old DMZ days. But I guess I'll come up with a different title. Probably
There's
something
also
about Trump.
we didn't do this. There's a giant Ferris wheel in the middle of the downtown area. There's a place called there's Old Montreal, which has neat old architecture and fancy shops and restaurants. Also, a Notre Dame church is there. It's an old Catholic church. So it's like being in Paris and seeing their Notre Dame. You can see the Montreal Notre Dame, and it's right on the there's a river there. It's right on the water there. And I believe there's some beaches which we did not do. There's some Montreal beaches in that area. So there's a giant Ferris wheel that you can ride and get like a big 360-degree view of the whole city. So there's some other Montreal tips I got for you.
It's funny you mentioned the Notre Dame Cathedral. When I used to live in Old Town Alexandria, and there's like a trail, a park, and they have like a miniature Washington's monument that's like I don't know, 5 feet tall or something. And I used to think how funny it would be for me to like try to like take foreigners there and tell them that that's the Washington Monument. It looks a lot bigger on TV. This is, get to take pictures with them and me like towering, over the Washington Monument. It's almost
All
like
right.
the Stonehenge, which we could trample. Anyway, I guess we should talk about politics. And Bill, let's start with the elections. We're taping this Wednesday morning. Again, not too early, not too late. Primaries, obviously, but what were
Mostly, we got one special
one
last night.
special? What were your takeaways?
Well, the big takeaway is New York 19, Hudson Valley. This was where Antonio Delgado won a big race in 2018. A race I always argued was underanalyzed because that was the race where Republicans played every race card imaginable on him because it's a very wide area, and a bona fide swing, red blue divided district, and he deflected all that. That was the Andrew Gillum lost to DeSantis, Stacey Abrams lost to Brian Kemp, and here's Antonio Delgado deflecting a lot of racist attacks with a lot of ads with him around white people saying Antonio Delgado, he gets it. He's one of us. He didn't do like an uber left kind of campaign, but so now he got tapped to be lieutenant governor under Kathy Hochul. So it's an open seat. And Biden won the district by 1.5 points in 2020. So again, this is very purple, and it's a midterm year. Supposedly Republicans are on the upswing. Inflation's bad, and Republicans got a strong recruit in Mark Molinaro, who ran for governor 4 years ago, but he's an elected official in the area. He has a
Did we
reputation
determine if he's related to Susan Molinaro?
I don't believe he is, but he was someone who was considered like a center-right, fits the district, known commodity, and all the polling suggested he was going to beat the Democrat Pat Ryan, who also an elected official and is the Ulster County executive. But there's several counties in the district, so Ulster is not enough on its own to get you to 50. And Pat Ryan ran laser focused on abortion. Molinaro I believe in the assembly had a pro-life voting record, but was like, hey, I'm not going to vote for a national ban. This is settled. Leave it up to the states. In New York, we're pro-choice, and I'm cool with that. So he tried to deflect, but Pat Ryan beat him, it looks like, by 4 points. So Ryan did a little better than Ryan. And this is one of several specials. The other specials, Democrats haven't necessarily won, but they've overperformed relative to Biden, with the exception of that Rio Grande Valley, Texas one, where the Republican Latino won. So it's definitely making Democrats feel like, hey, we're in this thing. With this is not looking like a normal midterm year, and abortion is one of the reasons why.
Yes. Well, let's talk about that. This has now become cliche, but everybody was really thinking this was going to be a wave year for Republicans. Joe Biden's approval rating very low. Inflation, gas prices were very high, and it just seems like that is not materializing. Now, who knows? We've still got 3 months or something like that. It's a lifetime in politics. But do you think the abortion issue is the reason, or is it a bunch of reasons?
I think it's more a bunch. I think it is a significant one, but I would not necessarily assume we can know at this point that it is the reason. When you see the issue, you ask what's your top issue in the midterms. Abortion's moving up, but it's not the number one. It's not like outpacing inflation. It's still mainly the biggest issue for Democrats, not necessarily independents. But we do have the Kansas example. We do have an example of even people who are not, hard left people concerned about abortion rights. Uh, and now and so I think one of the open questions in New York 19 is, was this turnout? Did Dems boost their base turnout to win this, or was there some swing vote that helped them along the
Yeah.
way? I don't think we have like the answer to that. But to my mind, we have a number of factors here that we can't easily separate. We have the abortion factor. We have Democrats passed a bunch of legislation in the past month, some bipartisan, one big one that's partisan, the climate healthcare tax reform bill. So I think at minimum, that is staving off some base erosion. You don't have a faction of the left saying, what's the point of voting for these idiots? They don't even do anything. In the sense that, hey, we've done things. Inflation has slowed in the past month, both gas prices and in general. And we have a lot of terrible Republican candidates, not in New York 19, but as far as the Senate goes, we have, Dr. Oz, Blake
Yeah.
Masters, Herschel Walker, and the incumbent Ron Johnson, who's a weak incumbent. It doesn't seem like Adam Laxalt is that strong in Nevada. So you have a slate of candidates who where a better candidate could have made a race competitive. And that's not to say that all these people are like sure losers, but as far as if the polls were accurate and the election was today, Democrats would gain 2 seats in the Senate, not even just hold status
Wow,
quo.
it's amazing. Let me,
Uh,
Bill. Let me ask you. I'm going to interrupt you to praise you. I feel like you were the first person I heard saying this, saying that I think there's a chance Democrats are going to hold the Senate because Republicans are running weak candidates. Were you the first person to point that out, or were
I mean,
you?
I wrote a Real Clear Politics piece. Let me see if I can find that piece quickly. I'll also say that I wrote in May 2001 that if Roe was overturned, that's going to be bad for Republicans. Um, I mean, there was data to back up that point that early. Uh, so again, I can't say that like I've been definitively proven correct, but there's certainly
I
signs
wrote in
in that
August.
direction.
I wrote in August of 2021 that column, but then I backtracked, so it doesn't count.
Right. So it was. So this is what you get by doing this live and not editing. Uh, so early June 2002, I wrote, in the
Wait,
race for the Senate, Republicans not sitting their best.
2002? That was really
June
ahead of
two,
the curve.
June 2002. Well, this year 2002. So that was
2020, 22.
so sorry 2022.
I'm like,
Sorry,
you
sorry,
were
sorry.
you were like way ahead of the curve on that one, man.
So that was 2.5 months ago.
But okay, but again, self promotion here. This is the reason people tune into us. Wisdom before it's conventional. I feel like you were the first person to point that out. It's become cliche now to say.
Well,
Were you
this
the
was
first person, or had
I
you heard, like, did Steve Kornacki say it or something, and you were, just popularizing it?
not. I mean, not to my knowledge. I mean, maybe someone else said something. I believe I wrote that soon after Oz. Right, this was just after Oz won the primary, but before the crudité video.
Yes.
You
Oh
know,
yeah.
but,
Well before that.
but
Well before.
like now, I think Oz has become the poster child of the bad Republican candidate, and I wrote that before Fetterman really went to town on him from being from New Jersey and tied Oz into knots. My point was, you already had in the poll data that Oz ended that primary underwater in his favorable unfavorable rating. He was chewed up enough in the primary process before Fetterman even got to work on him.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing Fetterman, has played a strong hand, very, very well, and made Oz into a national laughingstock. So,
And let me just say,
everybody,
Fetterman Fetterman has an army of online trolls that he has cultivated, or he just has a cult of personality. Because I wrote a piece this week at the Beast where I sort of dinged Oz and Fetterman. You know, just this race of rich people pretending to be populists, and in the case of Fetterman, he pulls it off. Fetterman feels like a normal guy. Oz, obviously, with the crudité, that has not pulled it off. But because I dared to write something mildly critical of Fetterman, well, I think I kind of called him a phony, but whatever. Um, I can't tell you the emails and the tweets that I've gotten from outraged people.
it's funny because I've always been bullish on Fetterman. I think I've said this on
I think
past
you have been.
shows.
You've been ahead of the curve on him. Absolutely.
And there was this weird. I can pay both my children are awake. Laz is going horseback riding in the afternoon, so she's going to be spending a lot of time not watching TV. If you want to watch right now, go ahead and watch. It's a question
That's
of
why people
screen
tune in.
time. Question of screen time rules. When do they get to watch screens? Um, uh,
You've been bullish on Fetterman
right.
for
And so I
years.
would say that early on in the Pennsylvania primary, where all these Connor Lamb people would yell at me in the thread like, "Fetterman's unelectable. He's a Bernie crowd. What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm getting attacked for being too left on Twitter. What's going on here? Where did moderate Twitter come from defending Connor Lamb? But my point always was that Fetterman wasn't strong because he was a Bernie guy. Fetterman was strong because he has a personal brand of being, a true Pennsylvanian, being one of us. And I understand your point that, hey, this guy is a trust fund kid who got to be a part-time mayor because his parents, compensated him while he was getting paid $150 a month as mayor of Braddock. And I don't think Fetterman has hid that fact, which is why I think phony is strong, but definitely doesn't fit with the brand. He doesn't like put that in bright lights.
Yeah.
Um,
But I'm just warning you, Bill. If you love Fetterman, so you're fine. But let me just say, there are people in this business. You will discover that there are certain people that elicit a strong response that people will be protective of and defend, and
well, Fetterman,
other people that you could say bad things about them all day and nobody cares.
well, I mean, Fetterman always had a fan base. He's had a fan base for a long time. That I think was a bit more narrowly Bernie-ish, and now that's much broader because now he's showing how good he is at developing a personal brand and weaponizing that brand, using it to tie his opponent into knots. I mean, and the Republicans picked the absolute worst possible candidate to match up with Fetterman.
Do you think now Dave McCormick? This is three rich guys, right? Dave McCormick is it Dave McCormick, or was that a pitcher for the Orioles? I'm not
I
sure.
forget, and who even cares at this point?
Whatever the guy's name was a big time hedge fund broker that Oz beat narrowly, very narrowly, only because of Donald Trump's endorsement. The guy seems like maybe a Glenn Youngkin, Mitt Romney type. I wonder, would he have really been that good of a? I'm not sure he would.
I mean, it's hard to be as bad as Oz has been. I mean, Oz has just done every possible thing wrong.
What
He's
is
just
so
like,
weird is that you would think that Dr. Oz, having this, huge name ID, very popular, Oprah had really Oprah's elevated some of the biggest monsters probably in history. But Oprah, he had nothing but positive fluff attention. I'm sure. I think I read that among women, especially, he was popular and had high likability and name ID. And it just didn't work. Ala Pundit over at Hot Air. Do you ever read Ala Pundit, Bill?
only I think when you tweet them and I catch them that you link to.
I don't know who the guy is in real life, but he's really good. Whoever it is very insightful and a very good writer, and had a point about I wish I was paraphrasing here, but he said something to the effect of like, Oz is ridiculous, but so was Trump. But the ways that Oz is ridiculous, like, do not resonate with like Republicans or populists, and the way that Trump is ridiculous actually do.
Well, Oz has essentially taken every nibble of bait that Fetterman has thrown his way. And in that respect, he's like Trump. Trump also takes every piece of bait, but Trump had a much better sense of humor. Two, had a much better bond with the right part of the Republican electorate. And so he could come back at you, tenfold, and, dominate the free media coverage. So whatever it is you're talking about what he's saying.
What's weird though, Bill, is if you took Dr. Oz and you watched him on TV, or if you went to a convention and heard him speak, I think you would be like, wow, this guy is charismatic. I mean, he's obviously, you could play the identity politics thing. Maybe it helps him, that he is not a standard issue white dude. He's actually like knows something. I mean, I know he's kind of a quack doctor, but he's like a cardiologist or something. He is like highly, I'm sure.
I mean, Trump's a quack businessman. I mean, you can flip that a long way.
You take Trump and Oz and you put them both on TV, and they both, in that element, which is stacked in their favor, they look charismatic. And then you put them on politics, and Trump looks bigger, and Oz looks smaller.
I mean, Oz is not. What Trump did was an extension of his own blustery, narcissistic brand. I think he took it farther to the right than he had to. He could have run up the middle, but it wasn't far flung from the kind of person he always was.
So maybe if Oz were running as a Democrat in an era that wasn't supercharged with populist machismo, he would have been a better candidate.
Well, it doesn't be a Democrat, but Oz could have run as your friendly neighborhood doctor. A nice guy who tries to help people, not be sick. And instead, he's running like a wannabe Trump.
I see.
And like getting into all of these online arguments with Fetterman when he could have just ignored it. You could have just ignored all the online stuff Fetterman was throwing at him. He didn't have to indulge. Didn't have to do the cutesy videos.
So this goes to the phony thing. What you're saying, I think, is Oz is temperamentally not well suited to run a bare-knuckled populist brawl, and yet he is posing or pretending to be that kind of guy. And Fetterman's actually better at it than Oz is.
Oz could have spent June and July while Fetterman was laid up, barnstorming the state, lots of small town halls, maybe with some kind of like a Ross Perot-like PowerPoint presentation, where Oz could say, I'm a doctor, but I'm also an entrepreneur, and I can tell you the economy is sick. And here's why the economy is sick.
Good, Bill.
I
should hire you.
Here's 3 charts where the economy is sick, and here's my remedy for it. And it's like Fetterman doesn't even have to be part of the equation.
Make it look
just
like
sell yourself.
Make it look like a TV set, like you're going to give it a little celebrity appeal. People would
use his own TV set. I mean, be in your comfort zone. Like, take your set and bring it on the road. Make people feel like you're in the studio audience with him.
They get to see a celebrity, except instead of diagnosing just a person's health, he's diagnosing the economy's health.
People are making jokes with his old tweets. He had this whole series like poop tweets.
People are making
fun of right now. Like, he could have used that himself. He could have gotten ahead of all this and like made a little jokey thing with like him talking about your poop and like, and then make some kind of poop joke about the economy. Like he could have turned all these things around to his benefit and like because Trump has certain self-deprecating aspects about him also. Um, there's so many ways he could have done this, just run on his brand and his platform. And so he's like, Fetterman sets the tone for this entire thing, and he did it while he was recovering from a stroke. So I mean, the only thing that really worries me about the race is at some point they're going to have a debate, and like Fetterman's been out there, and like he's clearly got like 90%. He's not 100%.
I don't know. Well, I saw a video, and now again, I'm sure it's selectively edited or at least selectively chosen. But Fetterman did not seem to be 90%. He seemed to be 60%, maybe.
Okay, that's subjective, but definitely not 100%. There's a halting quality to his speech now, which he said. Like he's not pretending. He said like my speech is not perfect. I got sometimes I'm grasping for a word. Like he's said as much. And the question becomes how much has he inoculated himself from concerns about it? And the biggest test is going to be when they're in an actual 90-minute debate and you can't edit anything. And people are I mean, he's in a couple campaign appearances, but for the most part, you see a 2-minute clip on the local news. You only see a bit of it. You don't see the whole thing. The debate, you'll see the whole thing, or at least more people will. We'll have to see how well he comes across then. But that's like the only hope for Oz at this point is that Fetterman looks like he's not up to the task.
I want to go back to Oz real quick. Do you believe that one of the problems with Trump is that every Republican now thinks they have to beat Trump? And some people are not temperamentally suited to it. There should be different types of candidates, different styles, different temperaments, all of that. And B, like, Trump is really good at what he does, at being Trump. You're not gonna out-Trump Trump. And like it strikes me that maybe the fundamental problem with Oz is that rather than trying to run to his strengths in a way that was comfortable and suited his personality and experience, he felt like he had to run in a sort of a macho populist manner. And was that sort of the fundamental flaw to the whole thing?
Well, I mean, it's a flaw across the board. I mean, Trump has determined the Senate slate of candidates. Did he endorse Laxalt in Nevada? I'm not sure. Maybe he stayed out of that one. But
I don't know.
But he picked Oz, he picked Herschel Walker, he picked Blake Masters, he picked J.D. Vance, he picked Ted Budd in North Carolina. We haven't talked about that race very much. And that's, I mean, what minimal polling we've seen is that it's close there. He even half picked Eric Schmidt in Missouri.
Eric.
So, this is a Trump determined slate, and they're all weird.
Well, okay,
weird candidates.
But I think in the case of Oz specifically, maybe the thing is, because the key to Oz winning is he had to get Trump's endorsement.
Yes.
Oz therefore maybe has to become the type of person that would win Trump's endorsement.
Well, but that's the primary. I mean, he doesn't do anything like that now.
I know, but what I'm grappling with here is, so I don't think the flaw was picking Oz necessarily. Because isn't there a scenario where Oz would have run the campaign that you're describing and he would be up by 3 points right now?
I mean, I think Fetterman's a strong candidate on his own, but certainly this could have been a much more competitive race with a competent campaign. Look, the crudité video, where Oz says he's at Wegner's, when he could have been at a Wegmans or a Red Nerves, but not a Wegner's. Look, people say, blurt out inaccurate things all the time. Your Republicans try to make a
Just
big deal
watch
about
this show. I mean,
right,
look no
right.
further than this.
Yeah, that's why I feel like people are overly mean about Kamala Harris repeated herself 3 times, and Obama said 57 states when he meant 57 contests because there are caucuses and the Virgin Islands and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And people try to overplay these things to make it seem stupid when uh, common sense tells you like they're just being normal human beings. They're not actually they don't really believe that there's 57 states, and people in extemporaneous speech repeat themselves sometimes. That's not an abnormal thing to do. In the case of Oz, you have a weakness that you are a carpetbagger. You literally did a video of your New Jersey, New York suburban mansion for People magazine 2 years ago. Like there's strong evidence you are not really from Pennsylvania. Carpetbaggers win contests sometimes, so that's not necessarily fatal, but you have to be
Yeah.
careful how
And
you present yourself.
well, and I
So
think also certain regions are more. It matters more in certain parts of the country
sure.
than others.
So you're cutting a video. It's not a live stream. It's a video that you can edit.
Yeah.
And you do a take.
Wait, presumably Oz doesn't have the same problem we have. I'm guessing that
That's right.
someone could edit his video.
You edit video, you cut the video, you say the name of the supermarket wrong, and nobody on the campaign team catches it. Not a single. I mean, you have to be a fifth generation Pennsylvanian to go outside and look up at the sign and recognize you said the wrong supermarket name.
Yeah, he needs to hire someone from Pennsylvania whose only job is to walk around with him everywhere, seeing if he says something un-Pennsylvanian.
So my point is, his team doesn't get Pennsylvania. So that says to me that this is just a flawed operation from top to bottom.
I think that's a good point. Staff work matters, and so this is not only indicative of Oz being a carpetbagger, but of a campaign that is not very well run at this point. Let me ask you this: aside from Fetterman's stroke, it strikes me that there's another issue, which is where he like subdued an African American jogger or something.
But these things came up in the primary. So when he was mayor,
but I mean, if you're desperate and you're down by 5 points or worse, maybe you throw a few $1 million behind telling this story. I don't know to what degree this is widely known.
I mean, his opponents in the primary tried to make a thing of it. I saw the Babylon Bee took a shot at Berman about it. Their piece. There's also mocking Oz. I just don't think it's a very strong general election attack. I mean, it just makes him look more badass. He went out with a gun and tried to subdue a criminal. Now he got the situation wrong. The guy wasn't armed. He was an African American person he was running down.
That's a big problem.
Right. But he didn't shoot the guy. He apologized for it, more or less. And it didn't hurt him in Braddock. He still got reelected in Braddock. He still has the cred of being someone who was mayor of this town for a long time, is credit for improving the quality of life for this majority Black town. So it doesn't strike me as being the strongest attack line for a Republican to take.
I mean, I wonder what if you found the guy and you put him in the video. So there have been occasions, Bill, where there's something everyone thinks is out there. We think it's been litigated. We think we know it, and then it does hurt.
The best hope is that you would erode some of his African American support, so you'd erode some of his base support and make a race, and support he would need to win the general. If you're losing by 9 points, that's not going to do it. That's not going to be enough. Maybe some part of a larger scheme, but he's got a much bigger problem in that this has become burned into people that like Fetterman's Pennsylvania and Oz is not.
Yeah.
And I think Fetterman's got to really screw up at this point, and that could be a debate performance where he looks like he's not all there, to be a real game changer.
Well, what's interesting, Bill, is that Donald Trump lost re-election, which used to brand you a loser. A one-term president was not was not good. Um, he lost the Senate. I mean, he single-handedly sabotaged the Senate. He loses the House during his presidency. Um, and now, if Donald Trump endorses this slate of candidates and they go on to lose, you know, Donald Trump's record of everything he touches dies,
Mhm.
continues, and yet he still would have. I still think he has because he commands this power over the Republican Party. There is still a sense that he is magical and that he is bulletproof, and it's just so weird that even though I think we're accruing all these data points where you could really just empirically prove that Donald Trump has been disastrous for the Republican Party, I think he could lose. We've talked about this before. I think he could blow the Senate because of his endorsed candidates, and I don't think it's really going to matter that much.
Well, Trump got the slate of candidates not because he commands 35% of the party, but because he commands, a third to 45% of the party, and people won pluralities and crowded fields for the most part. Um, so if those candidates all go bust in November, some Republicans, I don't know about publicly, but he's probably going to recognize that Trump is dead weight. Now, what would really throw Republicans for a loop is if they lost the House too. And you look at the 538 projections; they have Democrats winning the Senate. A two-thirds probability of Democrats winning the Senate, roughly, but still Republicans heavily favored to keep the House. And I'm not in a position to say that's wrong. I just heard a piece for Real Clear looking at the generic congressional ballots. That's various forms of the question: who do you plan to vote for in November for the House, the Republican or the Democrat? That's why it's generic. It's not there's no names attached to it. Um, uh, and as it stands, that's knotted up. So in the 538 average, Democrats are ahead by 0.6 points. In the Real Clear Politics average, Republicans are up by 0.2 points. It's essentially a tie. And in the Real Clear Politics number, Democrats have gained 4.6 points since late April. That I think they've gained 3 points in a similar period for 538. So that's unusual. It's unusual for the president's party to gain ground late in the game in a midterm year. The traditional pattern is, and there's an academic paper about this that was published in 2010, that the generic ballot at the start of the year tends to look more like the previous presidential election, and over the course of the year, the out party makes the gains, and you generally see that being true in the years after this paper was published. Now, it's still possible that there could be a momentum shift the other way, that Republicans could still, for whatever reason, developments break, inflation jacks up, scandal accrue, who knows? But I'm not saying it's a given that the Democratic momentum through August organically continues September, October. We have to wait and see. But the fact that they've done as well as they have is unusual. And the only times that we've seen late trends for the president's party have been in 1998 and 2002, which has happened to be two of the three times since Reconstruction where the president's party has gained House seats in the midterms. So I think this then brings up another
And that
question,
was
which is
an impeachment and a terrorist attack.
right. So 1998, The Scher report is released in September of 1998, and the House votes for an impeachment inquiry in October. So you had late break. So the Democrats were not making great gains in the summer. It was only after those points where they started, and it wasn't necessarily a clean line; it's kind of zigzaggy. But the Democrats do end with a lead in the generic ballot, and that 1998. I'm looking at Gallup numbers from 1988 because we don't have averages to look at. I'm sure if I had access to all the poll data, I could make an average, but I didn't. So I was looking at Gallup. So Democrats were up 4 in Gallup. The House popular vote, they actually lost by a point, and they didn't win the House. The Republicans kept the House, but Democrats did gain seats. So it was an indication that Republicans were soft for that midterm. In 2002, 9/11 is 2001. Democrats were actually made a little bit of ground in the early part of the summer, but then I'm mixing up years. I'm sorry. Forget. I can't. I have to go back and look. But the point is, I think we're doing relatively okay in the middle of the year. Again, they're the out party in 2002. But in the fall, you have the Iraq War Authorization vote in October, and again, it's not necessarily a clean line, but you do see on net Republicans making gains in the fall there, and gaining seats and actually flipping the Senate that year, because that tipped the Democrats' way when Jim Jeffords switched. So if Democrats can continue this momentum, that could we already see the polling show Democrats keeping the Senate as it stands. Could they win the House? Now, what I think we don't know is we don't have a lot of race by race data for the House. So we look at the generic ballot. How good does the generic ballot have to be? I mean, right now they're tied. Probably a tie in the generic ballot is not good enough to hold or win seats. But the conventional wisdom is that Democrats have to do really good in the generic ballot to overcompensate their wasted votes in blue areas, to overcome the skew of the map and the redistricting. But we have 4 Democratic wins, not just midterms, for the House. We have in the past 20 years. We have 2006, 2008, 2012, and 2020. Oh, no, sorry. 2006, 2008, not 2012. 2006, 2008, 2018, and 2020. In those first 3, Democrats had a big lead in the generic ballot, but they also won the House by a good margin. It wasn't a single-digit margin. In 2020, it is a single-digit margin. The generic ballot was like 6 points, and the House popular vote was about 3 points. So they underperformed relative to the generic ballot. So that argues that Democrats if they want to replicate 2020 and keep a 5-seat margin, they got to do that again. Possible. Now there are other midterms, other House elections where Democrats overperformed the generic ballot. It doesn't always run in one direction. In the 10 House races, 6 Democrats underperformed real clear politics average, and 4 they overperformed. So we don't know. Just now in New York 19, Pat Ryan overperformed what polls that were available. So all I'm saying is it is technically possible that Democrats could meet or overperform the average. And it is possible that whatever that popular vote is aligns with the seat share, because the last 2 House elections, 2018, 2020, House popular vote and House seat share have been basically the same. So it's not that they have to overperform in House popular vote to keep the House. Now, there is redistricting this year, and the Cook assessment is Republicans have gained 3 seats through this current round of redistricting, which is something, but it's not a huge amount. So again, I wouldn't feel confident about the generic ballot with it just being a tie. I'd feel better if it was 6-7 points. But I don't think we can say like it has to be 6-7 points because we have other complicating factors. So I just think the net of all that is we don't know. We don't know how the House is going to look based on the data that we have.
All right. Well, we're at the 50-minute mark, Bill, so we should wrap it up soon. But before we go, you have been a voice crying in the wilderness once again. This time warning that Ron DeSantis, everyone assumes he's just going to coast to re-election and he's going to parlay that into a presidential run. And you've been saying, well, hold on, maybe not. Bill, last night there was a gubernatorial primary in Florida, and I'd love to get your assessment of what we learned and how, if you've reevaluated your thoughts on DeSantis.
Well, I thought that Crist was probably the better matchup for DeSantis. I mean, I think the way to beat DeSantis is to say, this guy doesn't even want to be governor. This guy's already running for president. This guy just did an ad where he called himself Top Gov, pretending he's Tom Cruise, flying in a jet, and running that ad in Ohio. He's not running to be governor. He's running for president already. He doesn't care about you. I'm Charlie Crist. I've been your governor. You know me. You know I care about Florida.
Crist not only was governor, he was like the most popular governor in America at one point.
And he didn't lose re-election. He jumped into the Senate race in 2010 and lost that. Now maybe he was trying to be a moderate governor. He embraced Obama. He embraced the stimulus. He angered Republicans, so he jumped out of the party. Ran for Senate as independent against Rubio, your best friend, and then got the Democrats split the vote because there was a Democrat in the race, and so he lost that. He tried to run for governor in 2014 against Rick Scott in a generally Republican year. Almost won. That was a 1 point race, if I remember correctly. It was 65,000 vote separation.
And Rick Scott spent untold amounts of money, I'm sure, and of his own money.
And then Chris got back in the game by running for Congress, and I was a congressman. So I think, Chris could argue, hey, I care about Florida. I've always cared about Florida. I ran the government well when I was your governor. This guy doesn't even care about you. He's using you as political props so he can run for president. I just think and he looks like a sober, down the middle kind of guy. So I think there is a good matchup there in theory. And winning the primary going away also helps with party unification. What rattled me last night is a story from NBCnews.com, surveying a bunch of Democratic operatives, all saying, oh, yeah, we're screwed. Oh, there's no way. There's no way we can beat DeSantis. He's got $140 million. There's no way we're going to match that. He's got Florida is too red. Like the best we can hope for is to kind of, make him spend some money here. But forget it. This is a lost cause. At a minimum, like they could be wrong. They could be prematurely surrendering, but it certainly doesn't help Chris raise money and try to minimize that fundraising gap by putting the message out there that this is a lost cause. So, Chris at this point has to do something, or, a magical poll has to come in where it's closer than expected to get people to believe. Like Beto in Texas is not running that close to Abbott. It's kind of like a 5-7 point race there. But he's working it so hard. Like he is out there stumping in, every red county possible. And the guy just gives good copy. He gives good quotes. He's good on the stump. You get good video clips. Like he kind of makes you want to believe.
It feels like he's getting his mojo back. I remember with the first time he ran against Ted Cruz, I thought he had a lot of talent and seemed pretty cool. Then when he ran for president, he turned into Dr. Oz Um, and
The
now
current president was the stupidest thing possible. He should have been like a Texas guy. And I
yeah,
said this at the time, like, run for Senate, run for governor, like, show you care about Texas.
nobody,
Building a Texas operation, expand that. Don't
nobody
take a
anymore
flyer.
wants. Everybody wants to be national. Everybody wants to be famous. Nobody wants to like be local. I don't blame them, but you know, but I think you're right. Like sometimes doing the right thing is also um, beneficial for yourself. I think
Yeah.
Beto was correct.
I'm not bullish on Beto winning the governor's race because the polling doesn't back it up. It seems like his gun rhetoric from the presidential is hurting him and holding him back. Uh, but at minimum, he makes enough people believe that he's raising money, so he's at least he can compete. He has enough resources to compete. Um, so the question now, Chris is a lower key guy, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it actually is a nice contrast with DeSantis, who is like this, in my mind, a totally unlikable troll who like doesn't, who's like fighting Disney, fighting like the biggest, uh, company in the state. I mean, there was the Bulwark site published a focus group report of of Trump to Biden voters in Florida, and they're upset with DeSantis picking all these fights and going after Disney. Um, Now, a Trump to Biden voter is not your median Florida voter because Trump won in Florida and Biden didn't. But it's some indication that there people exist in Florida who are unhappy with DeSantis. He's not like universally beloved. Like he may win because it's a 52-48 state. Um, but I would think the right mix of factors would make a state like that competitive. Uh, One of those factors is probably money because it's an expensive state to play in. And I worry now that Chris won't have the resources to compete. But if a poll number comes in or Chris comes in, roaring out of the gate and like really brings the wood to DeSantis in some way that again is on brand, that can make that contrast really pop, then maybe people start to believe again. But that initial survey of Democratic sentiment was not what Chris needed.
All right, well, we're up against it, Bill. Another great episode. What do you want to plug?
We can read that real clear politics piece. And do you have anything else of what I have in the monthly? I can't remember anymore because I went on vacation. You plug something while I try to remember.
Well, you can always support us at patreon.com/Bill Scher or patreon.com/Matt Lewis. Also, you should find this podcast, this audio podcast, you may be listening to it on the Blogging Heads feed, which I hope will go in perpetuity, but we're told it's going to disappear. It's going to go away. And so what I would recommend is if you go right now and just search DMZ or DMZ Show on iTunes, you will find the new feed that has the avatar is basically the Run DMZ logo, the Run DMC logo. It's red and black. Subscribe to that. Please rate and review it. That way, even if Blogging Heads quits carrying our feed, you will still have us, the audio of us. And if you are listening, I would also ask that you go to youtube.com/Matt Lewis and subscribe, like, rate, and review, all that stuff. It helps people find us, and we need to be found. Bill.
And also, there's also a buzzsprout.com feed, which is the podcasting service that we're using. So you can get the podcast.
And if you go to our Twitter feed, which is at DMZ Show, we have tweeted out all these links as well. You can find them there easily.
So the Washington Monthly piece I had last week was about Trump's plans for the civil service. There was a big Axios report last month about how Trump wants to bring back this called Schedule F, which he briefly issued at the end of his presidency, that would reclassify a bunch of civil servants who are senior level and take away their workplace protection so they can be fired for political reasons. And so I had a piece talking about, one, how this is long-standing desire from conservatives predating Trump to break the civil service, and two, the Senate could do something right now to prevent that executive or such an executive order from going into effect by passing legislation preventing such a reclassification. The House passed something in July, and the Senate could follow suit and get it to Biden's desk if they so chose. So check out that
Yeah.
piece at the Washington Monthly.
Oh, and also, and I do have to run, actually. I got to run out to a lunch meeting. But for those of you who listen to the podcast, at least go check out our YouTube channel, because we have a new intro that we are using, a new video intro that we are using for this show. And it's proven to be controversial. Some people love it, some people hate it. But I'd love to get your take. Let us know in the comments what you think. And with that, Bill, we will see you back here next week. No vacations in the DMZ.
All right, take care.
You guys.